All right, time to sharpen here. You want to get this clamped down somehow. I like to have the axe hung, but you don't have to. You can stick something through the eye and clamp it that way. But getting it hung gets the clamps out of your way. And I want to get this bit tipped up towards me a little bit. And I noticed that in Kurt S's last video, he uses a pencil for that. That works just fine. I prefer a small wedge. That way I can pull the axe off the table some and more easily get the clamp on it. I always have these paint sticks kicking around here, and that just allows so that the handle doesn't have to bend quite so much when you clamp this down. There you go. If it wants to move on you, put another one down here in the end, and you're clamped up and ready to file. I keep promising you guys that I am going to do a review on files, and will at some point, but suffice it to say that my two favorite fast cutting files are these Fred's, P-F-R-E-D, and the best fastest color cutting file I've ever found are these red-handled Simmons, double cut on both sides. They make smaller chainsaw files as well, but this guy will remove material quickly. All right, so once you got it taped up, the basic idea is just to remove material from this area. Doesn't matter how you do it, with a grinder, with a file, with a sander, but you have to get a lot of this gone. You can get hung up on angles, but basically just stick your file on there, lift up a little bit, and start filing. Let's see how hard this is going to be. Your file will normally slide a few times until you get dug in, and then it'll start to cut. It's nice to see that this isn't too hard to file. See, now we're starting to cut. Switched files here. My Simmons is a little dull. It's the one I use all the time. The other ones I really like are these Swick ski files. They're single cut, but they cut really fast as well. And they leave a nice finish. So don't worry about trying to make a certain shape. The profile of the head will dictate the shape of the grind, and it'll come out naturally. Just set in. You're going to be here for a little while. You want to remove a lot of material. You want to get this down somewhere around 20 degrees or just sub 20. That tends to be the place you want to sit for most woods. If you can get it just sub 20, you're going to chop most woods just fine. Don't think you have to do this all at once. I will often do half of the bit and then flip it over and do the other half at different days. Sometimes I'll just file for 5 minutes and then give it up and come back at it again. You don't have to do it all at once. Just do a little bit when you can. Kind of just filing at a 45-degree angle. And it is kind of a myth that you can't back drag. You can definitely do this. Just lighten up on the pressure when you're back dragging. But once you get good at it, you should be able to pick it up every time and still maintain that angle. We'll check our angle later by draw filing, but first we got to hog off a lot of this material. So just get rid of it. You can fix that later, even if you're a little convex. I should say I am aiming for a relatively flat grind there, so I want to be flat, I don't know, a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch off of the eye back here. It's definitely nice to have a file card or a brush nearby. I prefer the bristles rather than the wire because these clean it better. Once you get a groove, don't be afraid to drag it back a little bit. Not cutting on the backstroke, just lightly dragging it back so you don't lose that angle. It can really help when you first start to file. A word really quickly on the hardness of steels. Now, I don't have any way of measuring this other than my own subjective experience, but I gotta say that this seems to be about the perfect hardness. A little harder than Council Tool, not as hard as Grand Force Brooks, and not nearly as hard as HB. HB is the hardest steels I've ever dealt with. Grand Force Brooks is fileable, but just Council Tool seems to be right in the perfect pocket. Other production axes like Oxenkoff is by far the softest steel I've ever dealt with. This just seems to be just right. You have to push pretty hard, but once you get started with each pull, you should be cutting steel. And not a lot of it, not big grains. I noticed when I was cutting Oxenkoff, it was gummy. It was so soft that it would like gum up the files because the chips were so thick. Anyway, that seems to be the best all-around steel. I want something I can file. And when it gets so hard, it chips pretty badly, but when it's too soft, then it rolls badly and won't hold an acute edge. And those are the things we're looking for in a striking tool. All right, it's pretty much apexed on the heel there and on the toe. Just gonna work here in the middle a little bit more. You can tell if you're staying flat or flat enough by the striations in the metal. If they're wavy, you know you're moving too much. There really is no such thing as flat unless you're using a jig, but you can get pretty flat hand filing just by paying attention to the striations in the metal. All right, I'm almost there, and I just want to check to make sure I'm halfway flat. So I've been draw filing here for a minute, and that's a great way to tell if you're relatively flat because your striations will show up differently. And you can see here that I was slightly tipping my file in the middle here because whenever I'm draw filing, I'm not hitting the very edge. And that's mostly because when you start to see that you're getting close to apexing, I get a little bit impatient and try to remove a little bit more on the edge so that I can say I'm finished. And that slight convex isn't a big deal, but you want to try to avoid that. So I'm just gonna spend a little bit of time and finish draw filing this as flat as I can get. Then we'll flip it over and do the other side. Remember, you want to file from the same side, so toe to heel. That's the way I filed the other side. That's the way I'm going to file this side. You can just hear how aggressive it is. Once you get a groove, it really starts to cut. See how aggressive this thing cuts? These red-handled Simmons, this one's wore out quite a bit. You can see the teeth are knocked off of it some. This one's still cutting strong. I have a few of these, and they're my favorite for hogging off a lot of material quick. And that's what I'm gonna do here, and then I'll switch to my Fred. All right, we're apex now. There is a burr all along the back side of this. I didn't check to see what angle we're at, probably around 20 degrees. A little bit finer than that. Probably just sub 20. Down here on the heel, we're probably closer to 18. But now I'm gonna put a small secondary bevel on here around 30 degrees or so. I just hold the file like this, and I just slightly start to put a secondary bevel on that. Just makes it a little bit more robust. There we go, that's all I'm gonna do there. While I'm there, I got one of these diamond files. I just like to refine that a little bit. Okay, see that burr all along there? Flip it over, do this side here. All right, let's sand down the handle, get some oil on this, and then next time we'll make a sheath.